Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, things adjacent. And thank you for your commentary on the last video. I got a lot of really good responses to the last video, so thank you guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for allowing me to riff on my inner musings, the things that I just have rolling around in my head most days. The fact that I can let that spill out once in a while on these videos, and it, it's appreciated on some levels. That's actually pretty cool. I have a new way past what the fuck entry. Again, I'm going to knock my mic as many times as possible, it seems like, during this broadcast. Before I read that, though, I wanted to read two comments from 2 videos ago. The first comment, one is a comment and the other is a response to the comment. First comment is from Imogen. Fear can be a motivator for sure, but relentless fear without clarity, relentless fear without trusting that the things you try to do will make any difference. Recycling, no doubt, is only marginally successful, being diplomatic. With no clear information, there cannot be direction or movement. Even those yelling about ACC are bickering and at odds with one another, so the crisis is not being communicated effectively. Extinction Rebellion, is making itself visible and felt, perhaps raising awareness, perhaps creating bigger divides between those who care and those who are too busy and tired of mixed messaging. Good to hear an article about dimming so little addressed. Will public awareness of that cause further despondency? Well, we're fucked, so what's the point? Who knows? But it still needs understanding. Beckwith says the cooling effect from dimming is outweighed by the warming. Shots in the dark. And good points brought up there by Imogen. And in response, Donald McCarthy wrote, Imogen, even mine owners know the value of the canary in the mine, one dead canary being better than 100 dead miners. And the dead canary must be replaced. Our wider society crucifies canaries, stops them singing, and then wonders why society collapses. The whistlers of doom are only harbingers of doom. We don't create it. Another day, another brick in the wall. We immure ourselves happily. And poetically and beautifully put by Donald McCarthy. Indeed, we do not value our canaries. We often shoot the messenger, or kill them, or disparage them, or ridicule them. As nutty, crazy, kooky, wacky, off the nut, out there, conspiracy theorist, extremist, alarmist. I could go on. But that is what human beings do. Humans take the best of us and we destroy them because the best of us remind us of how shitty the rest of us are, and we don't want to be reminded of that. We don't want to be forced to look at ourselves. We don't want to be forced to do better. So what do? We shut those people up. Time and time again, that's what we do in history. And it's, if you want to look for the cause of the demise of human beings, probably look no further than that. Let me get to this article way past what the fuck. Monday, March 11th, 2019. Truth be told. During times of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act attributed to George Orwell. The truth begins as a fluid medium and then solidifies as facts come in until you arrive at the solid core. Sherlock Holmes said, when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains however improbable, must be the truth. Humans have a long history of persecuting those who would tell the truth, from Galileo to Julian Assange. We appear not to have a capacity for truth. Our ability to separate truth from lies seems to have been left in the mudroom with the dirty shoes. It is a problem of perception and acceptance, as we only accept those things which fit into the narrow range of that which we perceive. A long time ago, when the first explorers were sent to this country, they were almost always accompanied by naturalists and artists whose job was to record the things they saw. They would draw pictures of the most fantastic creatures and plants, and it would be accepted as a valid representation of what was seen. If you were to do that today, you would be accused of just making things up because we know, quote unquote, so much more than we did then. Now we have the evening news, the internet, the pundits to tell us what to believe. Their reporting is less accurate than the drawings produced by the earlier explorers, and yet we believe without question the fantastic stories that they tell us. Ding, ding, ding. The heroes of the modern age will not be those who speak truth. Truth will be dismantled and replaced by the ravings of lunatics who cobble together a fiction from a junkyard of made-up realities and blindness. The monument to the species won't be great art or music. It will be piles of mismatched parts that represents the madness to which we have descended. The psychotics building a legacy to themselves and perpetuating the lies that support it. Bruce Lee said, "Those who are unaware that they were walking in darkness will never seek the light." The whole world is now walking in darkness with no light at the end of the tunnel. That will continue until our demise. We believe what it is that we believe that it is convenient to believe and discount. I'm going to read that again. We believe what it is convenient to believe and discount that which is disagreeable and unpleasant. There is a lot that is disagreeable and unpleasant in the truth of what is happening today, which is why no one is going to stop. Derek Jensen said, "People are more willing to accept the destruction of the planet than they are to accept the end of capitalism." Paraphrase, that is where we are at. We just refuse to accept the truth, even when we hear it, even when we see it, almost like it doesn't register, just like it's a shadow that will pass. People who tell the truth will never be heralded, and they will never be accepted. They will be vilified, marginalized, persecuted, and eventually discarded or killed. The structure that exists cannot afford to have the truth known. Their purpose is to perpetuate lies and deceptions in order to maintain their position. The truth tellers will be like a wall against fiction that will be torn down and replaced by a stage set that mimics real life. We are all living in a Truman Show world, and no one is trying to tear down the curtain. The idea of a warrior is based on a sense of fundamental fearlessness. There is no reason why you should be a coward. It's as simple as that. You are not being a warrior because a state of war exists in your country. We are not trying to win against the egohood people. We are not trying to fight with them. You are being a warrior because you are a warrior. If someone asks you, "Are you 21 years old?" you say, "Yes, I am." They don't ask you why you're 21 years old or how you have done this. You have no answer for that. You are just 21. Warriorship is a basic sense of unshakability. It's a sense of immovability and self-existing dignity, rather than that you are trying to fight with something else. This is a quote from Chogyam Trungpa, Buddhist meditation teacher. "Those who tell the truth are the warriors, and with every truth, they bring us all closer to the light. They should, however, remember Billy Wilder's words: if you are going to tell people the truth, be funny, or they will kill you." And is it any wonder that we have so many political pundits these days, or comedians? It's wacky to me. It's bizarre to me. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'm sure lots of people have noticed this. All the late night hosts that are, half comedy, half political, commentary. And a good portion of, the alternative news world contains comedians talking about politics. I don't know. That always seemed to bother me a little bit. because I have a certain something about comedy. Um, there are ways in which comedy can be used to cut like a knife, or to really like um, make a point about something that's absurd and make it funny. But it also can be a way to distract from the seriousness of an issue. So that's my problem with it, is that it doesn't matter how serious an issue is that you're talking about. Somebody can always just come up and swing the funny bat and just be like, oh, oops, there goes, there's all the weight that, was behind the issue that you were talking about. Sorry, that's gone now. And that always really kind of annoys me, but maybe I should just lighten up. What do you think? uh Another thing I wanted to say about um, this article that I just read, which was quite good as usual, and nicely say, I had no idea what it was about, so it really segued nicely out of the comments I read and what I was talking about. And also, I wanted to briefly follow up with the fact that I've been really trying to digest the idea of um, compassion versus not non-fragility, or um, I have a problem with feeding the fragile state of human beings, and we're getting more fragile by the day. The snowflake culture is everywhere, or calling people snowflakes, or pointing the finger, snowflake, or snowflake behavior is everywhere. How dare you offend me, or disrespect me, or whatever. And that's really what's happening in a lot of social media and a lot of political, or in a lot of the political arena, is that that's a parry against truth sometimes, right? You offended me, um, and so therefore I'm going to call you what I'm going to, use victimhood as my defense against the fact that you accused me of maybe, being the jerk that I am, or whatever. um so I don't know, and it's just a fine line. It's a fine line of how far, compassion is a beautiful, wonderful thing, and I want more compassion in the world, and I want to compassionately solve the problems of the world. I want people to be treated with compassion. I want myself to be treated with compassion. At the same time, there is a point at which compassion, and even, you know the humanist, uh, the humanist, what's the word I'm looking for? The humanist thrust in the world is creating a situation where, excuse me, we're not dealing with life on life's terms, basically. Um, at some point, we all die. At some point, we all get hurt. At some point, we all experience pain. At some point, we're less than someone else. At some points, we're better than others. We're on top. We're above. We're below. We're beside. We're equal to. There are a myriad of positions people can have in the world, and we want to have compassion for people who we feel are below us, and we want to have compassion from the people that we feel are above us, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's truth, and then there's just dealing with the truth, and then there's just the reality of life, and life being suffering, and life sucking, and life not being fair, and life ending because you die, and that's unfair, but that's what happens because you're born. That's great. And then you die. That's not great. um I don't know. Again, that really puts me in the balance, in the middle way. uh Compassion is great. Sometimes some very painful truth is the thing that is necessary. And I think just, falling to, always trying to kowtow to always trying to kowtow to, having to be compassionate or having to worry about, whether you're hurting somebody's feelings or not, can just put you in a place of not really being able to do anything or even speak the truth or even say, look, Jack, this is what needs to happen. And F your feelings. That's, a lot of times what happens in life. I don't know. Discernment is key, as always. But it makes me think of, so, on Facebook, when they were talking about the plastic straw ban, and right after that people started talking about that. People were like, we can't ban plastic straws because it's ableist. And, okay. The thing is that plastic straws are killing, life. You can't, or what's the guy from Greenpeace, right? You can't stop using fossil fuels or a bunch of people are going to die. Okay, but we're killing the planet. We're killing all the other animals. But but God forbid, people die. Sorry, Jack. That's what's going to happen. It's not a eugenicist plan, or it's not a plot. You're not going to when people are talking about the end of fossil fuels or compassionate degrowth or dealing with the problem of overpopulation or pollution or just the general destruction of the earth, guess what? You're not going to go out and just kill people or take people out, in order to deal with this problem. But you're going to have to come to grips with the fact that if you get rid of fossil fuels, you can't feed this many people. So how are you going to deal with that? And then so if you start saying like, well, if you make a one baby rule, well, oh, that's unfair, somebody's going to be hurt by that. Sorry, Jack. Like at some point you got to just draw the goddamn line, like this is the problem, this is what's going to happen, sorry, there's going to be, it's hurt feelings and hurt people along the way. If that's what we're going to do, I don't know. Is it compassionate to just let everybody go off the cliff? Right? Is that compassionate to just, for everybody to just go, don't worry about it, we're all going to die? Is that compassionate? I have questions. Anyways, and I've talked for far too long. Let me try and read another article while I have time. Well, let me cover a couple things if I can very quickly. There's so much CO2 in the atmosphere that planting trees can no longer save us. So only, I'm just going to modify this headline. Only planting trees can no longer save us, not planting trees. Planting trees is a great thing to do. That's going to help save us. I think they should have added the word only in there, because now it sounds like F planting trees, who cares? That's not going to save us, so forget it. Humans emit roughly 30 to 40 billion tons of greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide, into the atmosphere each year. If we keep it up, Earth will continue to heat up and ultimately devastate our way of life, and everybody will die. So what can we do about it? Most scientists agree that we need a way to capture some of the CO2 out of the atmosphere. One idea is to plant a lot of trees. Trees use CO2 in order to grow. They also release oxygen, so it's a win-win. But studies indicate that we simply can't grow enough trees to capture the necessary amount of CO2 that would help us meet the goals set by the Paris Agreement. In truth, we would have to cover the entire contiguous U.S. with trees just to capture 10% of the CO2 we emit annually. There's just not enough room on this planet to have the farmland it takes to feed the world, plus the space to plant the necessary number of trees. In other words, many of us would starve if we tried using trees to solve our emissions problem. And some people might think that that's a good thing, because if many of us starved, then less destruction for the other species and the rest of the earth, because it's not all about us, guys. It's not all about us. Speciesism, get over it. And the way to solve the plastic straw ban thing with for people who have disabilities is to, there's paper straws, there's metal straws, reusable straws. Just don't make them out of plastic. Uh, bring that straw with you. And lastly, I'm going to read this article from Truth Out. A Green New Deal must not be tied to economic growth. Hey, here's somebody who might have an idea that's closer to reality. Georgios Callis from Truth Out, March 10th, 2019. Excuse me. The Green New Deal bill is an audacious 10-year mobilization plan to move the U.S. to a zero-carbon economy. Bold and ambitious interventions like it are necessary in the U.S. and elsewhere if we are to unsettle the current complacency with climate breakdown. Academics like economist Robert Pollin, who kept alive the idea of a Green New Deal in the past years and provided the science to back it up, are to be congratulated for their efforts. Pollin has for years now proposed his simplified version of the Green New Deal, an investment of between 1.5 to 2% of global GDP every year to raise energy efficiency and expand clean, renewable energy. This would be the moment for him to celebrate that his cause has been taken up and contribute to working out the specifics. Instead, though, he chooses to focus on the differences between his proposal and a degrowth agenda. What's so funny about a degrowth agenda, Pollin? Which he finds utterly unrealistic. Oh, really? A waste of time for the left at best, and dangerously antisocial at worst. Whereas, that is not the moment to split hairs. This is not the moment to split hairs. Pollin's insistence on degrowth is inadvertently productive. It lets us see a sore point in the Green New Deal narrative, and this is that it risks it risks reproducing, unless carefully framed, the hegemonic ideology of capitalistic growth, which has created the problem of climate change in the first place. To begin with, Pollin never explains why growth is a necessary ingredient for his proposal. It is not clear why he has to argue that a Green New Deal will be good for growth, instead of simply advocating cutting carbon while meeting needs and fostering well-being. The only reason he provides for his preference for growth is that higher levels of GDP will correspondingly mean a higher level of investment being channeled into clean energy projects. If Pollin seriously means that he shares the values and concerns of degrowth advocates, then he could simply tweak his model and come up with a fixed amount of investment, independent of GDP, that would produce the same decarbonization. Higher levels of GDP will not only lead to higher levels of clean investment, but also higher levels of dirty investment. And the majority of investment is dirty. 1% growth in GDP leads to a 0.5 to 0.8% increase in carbon emissions. And this is as statistically robust a relation as it gets. Clean energy investment has no statistically significant effect on emissions yet, though, of course, this could and should change in the future. If we continue to grow at 3% per year, and everybody, cue laughter. By 2043, the global economy will be 2 times larger than this is just comedy. Anybody who's even making investments based on 3% growth a year in the economy is just an absolute. Don't invest with that firm, whatever you do. It is difficult to imagine creating a renewable energy infrastructure for our existing economy in a short time span, much less doing so for an economy that is 2 times bigger. The smaller our economic output is, the easier the transition will be. Good thunkin'. Pollin may well have chosen to emphasize growth because New Deals are about growth. But a Green New Deal does not have to be like the old New Deal. Pollin does not suggest that his investment program should be financed by deficit spending, nor that it should be short-lived stimulus repaid by growth. An investment at the level of 2% of GDP does not need deficit spending, assuming there is a political will for such a program. It could be financed by replacing dirty or socially useless investments, and there are many, starting with armaments. If there is no extra spending and debt, there is no need to stimulate growth to pay it back. Now, at some points in his article for the New Left Review, it's the New Left Review, Pollin seems to suggest that growth is an outcome of his proposal, not a goal or precondition. He claims that for accounting purposes, growth in renewable energy investments will contribute towards increasing GDP. But even in accounting terms, without deficit spending, there is no reason why a clean investment program will cause growth, since the 2% that will go to renewables will go to some other investment instead. The economy, moreover, is not an accounting convention. We could just as well imagine spending lots of money on digging and filling in holes. This could serve as temporary stimulus in a period of low liquidity and low demand, but it is obviously not a recipe for sustained growth. Pollan writes in his text that building a green economy entails more labor-intensive activities and that the private sector does not invest in renewables because they have low profit margins. Shifting financial resources from high productivity and high profit sectors to low productivity ones is not a recipe for growth. The energy productivity of renewables is also lower than that of fossil fuels. An economy of low productivity, low profits, and low energy returns is unlikely to be a bigger economy that grows. And this is fine, since our priority right now should be to decarbonize, not grow the economy. But Pollan unnecessarily links the former to the latter. Maybe Pollan is right and I'm wrong. Maybe a massive clean energy program would end up stimulating growth. However, it would be wrong to sell a program for stabilizing the climate with the promise of growth. What happens if it doesn't produce growth? Actually, it should not. Should not. Absolutely should not. Do we abandon decarbonization, since climate change is not the only problem with growth? There are good reasons why we can't afford more growth, even if it were powered by the sun. Economists typically justify growth in terms of poverty or stability. Pollan innovates by justifying it in the name of climate change, and this is coming from someone who otherwise sees the irrationality of perpetual growth. Compound growth is what Marxist scholar David Harvey calls a bad infinity. For Harvey, capitalism's requirement for compound growth is the deadliest of contradictions. Harvey points to the irrationality of expecting that demand, investment, and profits will double every 24 years. This is what a 3% growth each year amounts to: quadruple every 48, grow eightfold every 72, ad infinitum, and ad absurdum. Consider the following: 65% of anthropogenic emissions come from fossil fuels. The remaining 35% come from things like land use change, soil depletion, landfills, industrial meat farming, cement, and plastic production. Even if the energy mix were to become 100% clean and we continued to double the economy every 24 years, we would be back up to our existing emissions levels in short order. This is how irrational the pursuit of compound growth is. Climate breakdown now threatens to bring this absurdity to an end, but it is not only the climate. Biodiversity loss through mass extinction, land use change, and resource extraction are all directly linked to economic growth. Despite his claims to the contrary, there is no prospect of what Pollan calls absolute decoupling, or a reduction of these impacts while the economy grows. It is fanciful to think that there is one type of neoliberal growth that is bad and another type of growth that could be inclusive, progressive, clean, etc. Growth is an integrated process, and no matter what the ideologues of growth claim, there is no proof that we can grow the economy by selectively growing the goods while decreasing the bads. Armaments, advertising, fossil fuels, planned obsolescence, and waste of all kind are integral to capitalist growth. Since its beginnings in colonial Britain, growth has been fueled by unequal exchange of labor and resources between imperial centers and internal and external peripheries. Growth requires the investment of surplus for the creation of more surplus, and this surplus is created by exploiting wage workers and appropriating the unpaid work of women, migrant workers, and nature. Shifting of costs in space and time has also been central. Access to low-cost labor and resources is vital for economic growth. If inputs become expensive, the economy slows down. Pollan claims that growth stalled because neoliberalism prioritized the interests of the rich. The brutal cuts of structural adjustment policies and neoliberal austerity, however, were always made in the name of growth. The promise of growth bought the social peace the neoliberal project needed, even if the real outcome was the concentration of wealth amidst anemic growth rates. This tells us something useful about the dangers of growth politics. I'm going to move on down this article because I believe it's a little bit long. If the whole world were to consume as much as the successful case of Germany, global carbon emissions would almost double. That's just a little factoid. To stop climate change, we not only need to clean production, but also to reduce and transform consumption, which means we need to reduce and transform production, right? If you reduce and transform consumption, which is absolutely what we need to do, you need to do something with production, as in do away with production. And there goes, your energy use, and there goes your growth. The Green New Deal bill goes in the right direction, and its differences from Pollan's narrower proposal are informative and much closer to what I am arguing here. The bill does not only commit funds to renewable energies, but also to health, housing, and environmental infrastructures. It has provisions for economic security, akin to job guarantee and basic income schemes, provisions that will be vital if we are going to secure well-being without growth. Absolutely. Absolutely. We need to make sure everybody is okay, fed and housed, and has a plot of land and a place to grow their own food, can become self-sustainable, can unhook themselves from the grid and unhook themselves from the industrial, shipping tarantula or octopus is what I meant to say. Pick your poison. Granted, the bill does not talk explicitly about post or degrowth, does not challenge head-on prevalent patterns of consumption, as much as one like me sitting in an academic chair and not involved in parliamentary politics would have liked, but consumption would surely change. 2, if public services were expanded to the extent foreseen in the bill. Importantly, unlike Pollan, the bill does not emphasize growth or justify the plan in terms of growth. Pollan's insistence, then, on accentuating the differences between degrowth and the Green New Deal is outdated and unnecessary. Pollan's article was titled Degrowth versus a Green New Deal. Maybe it's time to stop inventing more internal versus and do the hard work of constructing some new ands. What about degrowth and a Green New Deal? Ding, ding, ding. The opponent is formidable, and what we need are alliances, not divisions. Pretty good stuff. I'm sorry I didn't have time to read the whole thing, guys. It's just very, very long, but I'm going to link it below. If you want to read every single word of that article, you can do so. That's all the time I have tonight. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.